Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these monitors behind me that I just referenced. These are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates across the country. If it's happening out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here. Let's begin. A surprise transition. President-elect Donald Trump names controversial Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz as his attorney general, sending shockwaves through Washington. Plus, fires rage across the Northeast as a historic drought persists. We're tracking the latest threats and looking at when we might see some much-needed rain. And security ramps up around a soccer match between France and Israel after anti-Semitic violence erupted at a game in Amsterdam last week. This game is happening in Paris. We're following the latest as protesters poured to the streets. This is CBS News 24/7. Let's begin with the latest on President-elect Donald Trump's transition. The biggest lightning rod so far has been his selection of former now Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. Gaetz has been the subject of House and Justice Department investigations into alleged sexual misconduct. He denies any wrongdoing. Also selected for positions, former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, Fox News host Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, and Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. But it's the Attorney General pick that has a lot of people talking on the Hill.
Doug Carter, do you think Matt Gaetz is confirmable?
We'll find out, won't we? I look forward to hearing from him about how he's going to straighten out the department. But my presumption is that I'll support all of his candidates.
The interesting answers are going to come from my colleagues on the GOP that are going to vote or justify voting for that mess.
All right, here for more reaction is CBS News political reporter Jake Rosen, who is joining us live from West Palm Beach. Jake, a lot of people are saying that, and this is not just a lot of people, these are people on Capitol Hill that are suggesting that Matt Gaetz has no chance of passing a Senate confirmation hearing with people like, for example, Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, or even Susan Collins in Maine, and that this is just a litmus test for who actually is willing to do whatever the president-elect wants them to do. In other words, if you cast a vote for Gaetz, then you're with him. If you cast a vote against him, then you're not with him, and that could have repercussions for you.
And certainly possible. And those two people that you named, Senators Murkowski and Collins, if they do vote against, and let's just say even one more senator joins them against Matt Gaetz, that's still a 50-50 tie, assuming that Democrats all vote against Matt Gaetz, which means that J.D. Vance, soon to be vice president, would be able to come in and break that tie. So in order for these people who have already come out being skeptical of Matt Gaetz' confirmation, there's still certainly a chance that with 4 defections, it fails, but with anything less than that, 3, 2, or even 1, and like you said, it could be potentially a litmus test, and do any of these senators want to get in the way of Trump's first initial cabinet picks? That would be a big mark for them for the next 4 years. And again, J.D. Vance can come in and break that tie, so it would take more than 4 senators to really do this.
Let's talk about former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who's now a Republican. She has made comments about Russia that some find troubling, including saying that the United States should stop supporting the war against Bashar al-Assad, the brutal dictator who's murdered millions of his own citizens. Why is that a concern for Trump?
Well, because Mrs. Gabbard would have to be in charge of all the country's information and intelligence. And in terms of whether she is a Russian asset, as former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton implied years ago, or simply just, working with potentially Donald Trump and this kind of isolationist wing of the Republican Party to pull out of these places, 2 very different scenarios, right? But either way, someone who would be in charge of how we handle intelligence in the country, how we share intelligence with allies like Israel and like Ukraine and like Taiwan. Again, those things all would have to come in play with her at the helm. Now, she would have to be confirmed by the Senate. Same thing, although her military background, I think, and just general lack of controversy in terms of legal investigations or ethics investigations into her, like someone like Matt Gaetz, there's certainly a higher chance that she's able to get through. And again, she's another close former and loyal ally of Donald Trump that is now being tasked with these immediate appointments that Donald Trump has made in the week and a day since he was elected.
All right, Jake Rosen reporting for us from West Palm Beach this morning. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it. Okay, some of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks, like now former Congressman Matt Gaetz, are leaving holes on Capitol Hill that will need to be filled. Let's bring in CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian to talk more about this. So, Nicole, already a razor-thin margin for Speaker Mike Johnson. What's the reaction to Matt Gaetz's resignation from Congress? I suspect that even with that margin, there are probably some on the Hill who are applauding this. Just getting him out of the way might be a win for some.
Yeah, well, I do have to apologize because you can probably hear a lot of music behind me. There is a reception happening on the level below me. But in terms of reaction to Gaetz's resignation, what was interesting was that it was actually Speaker Johnson who broke the news that Matt Gaetz had resigned effective immediately. CBS News obtained a copy of that resignation letter in which the Florida congressman said that he would not take the oath of office in the 119th Congress, which is the next Congress, in order to pursue the Attorney General position. But look, in talking to a lot of his House colleagues, certainly there were many who didn't like him, but others who, did find him as an ally. I think many, of course, remember that Matt Gaetz was really the leading instigator, if you will, who kind of drove that movement against former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, ultimately driving him out of the speakership with that motion to vacate. Obviously, there has been some concern with respect to the ongoing House ethics investigation, which is now basically defunct now that Gaetz has resigned. And I guess a big question is whether or not that report will come out. That being said, though, those who support Gaetz, who are allies of Gaetz, believe that part of this pick was designed because they see Gaetz as a disruptor. The president-elect sees him as a disruptor and wants to shake things up, particularly with respect to the Justice Department. We've heard a lot from Republicans who have been concerned about the role of the Justice Department. They feel at times it has been weaponized against Republicans, and so for that reason, Matt Gaetz has certainly been one of those vocal members who has kind of expressed that sentiment. So that is why some here on the Hill believe that he was picked. But as you have already noted, there is also a lot of concern about whether he can be confirmed, given some of the baggage that he might bring to the position, particularly with respect to those investigations against him.
Both houses are back in session today. What's on the agenda? Nicole, can you hear me? As you understand, I know you've got that noise behind you. Both houses of Congress are back in session today. What are you hearing is the agenda for the Republicans?
Well, obviously, with respect to the leadership elections that took place both in the House and the Senate, Republicans insist that they are going to operate in lockstep with the White House. So we saw yesterday, of course, the election of John Thune, who will become the next Senate Majority Leader, taking over for Mitch McConnell, who has served both as Majority and Minority Leader over the past 18 years. And he says that this is a new day, that he will move forward on the Trump agenda. One thing to watch for, though, is how he handles this issue of confirming the president-elect's cabinet picks, because, of course, President-elect has made clear he believes the next majority leader should use recess appointments to expedite some of those nominees. Thune, for his part, prefers the regular order and standard process of holding those confirmation hearings, but at the same time, he has also said all options are on the table. As for Speaker Mike Johnson, he was renominated again to that post, and so there is, for the most part, a lot of support behind him. We don't expect another speaker fight when we enter the new Congress next year, but Speaker Johnson has made clear he is ready to move forward on the president-elect's agenda, this 100-day agenda that Republicans have been strategizing about for some time, and will be with the president-elect this weekend in Mar-a-Lago. Vlad.
All right, Nicole Killian for us on the Hill. Thank you, Nicole.
You bet.
We have some breaking news to share with you. The satirical news outlet The Onion has purchased Alec Jones's Infowars at auction. Families of Sandy Hook shooting victims backed the move to acquire this website, the inventory of the website, and even the production equipment. Those families won a $1.5 billion libel suit against Jones for spreading false information and conspiracy theories about the Sandy Hook shooting. CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano is following this case, and she joins me now to discuss. Lilia, so remind us and our viewers what led to this libel suit and now this massive ruling.
Well, Vlad, as you and all of us remember, back in 2012, 20 children and 6 educators were killed in this mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut. Alex Jones has been and had been for years claiming that it was a hoax, that those children were not killed. As a consequence of that, the people who followed him, who listened to him, who heard of his conspiracies and lies, started harassing these families. So for years, the parents whose children were killed in the most horrible of ways had to also endure the harassment, violent harassment, for years of the people who followed Alex Jones. So of course they sued. They won or settled on a $1.4 or $5 billion lawsuit. And last June, a court ruled that his assets would have needed to be liquidated in order to pay these families. So what's happening now is that Alex Jones, as part of this liquidation, the Infowars website, which means the channel, the social media sites, and all of the technology, the set, everything that goes into putting him on air would go into this bidding. There were some people who supported Alex Jones who were bidding on that, some far-right bidders, and who ended up winning was The Onion. How this happened is because the families from the Connecticut families that were part of that lawsuit decided to forego part of the debt owed to them by Alex Jones in order to increase the value of the bid, which we don't know exactly how much it is at this point yet. That has not been made public, that The Onion was putting up in order to purchase all of those assets of Infowars. What they're going to do now, Vlad, with that is, of course, we all know The Onion is a satirical site, which has raised a great deal of awareness through satire whenever there are mass shootings. And they're saying that the exclusive advertising on the site moving forward, once they own it, is going to be Every Town for Gun Safety, as you know, one of those organizations or foundations that are trying to raise awareness about gun violence.
So, Lilia, any word from Alex Jones himself about all this? Oh, Alex Jones was, last I checked, he was still live on X. He has been saying that he's going to fight this, that this is all political, that people are trying to silence him. He at one point mentioned during that live stream that we're seeing that he trusts Elon Musk and even President-elect Trump are going to come, protect his speech. So, he's going to continue doing what he does, he says, by other means, not via Infowars, but inviting his followers to keep buying some of his products and support him, and in other platforms or outlets. What we can expect is that after such an expensive suit for him, that he would finally stop attacking these families. All right, Lilia Luciano reporting early this morning for us with that breaking news. And Lilia, of course, you will have much more tonight on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell. We appreciate you.
Absolutely, Vlad. Thank you.
Thanks, Lilia. All right, a key inflation measure has just dropped, what it signals about the state of our economy, and more importantly, how it will impact your bottom line. That's coming up next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Taking you now to Capitol Hill, where the Senate is in session. Chuck Schumer speaking. Let's listen.
Congratulate Senator Thune on being chosen by his colleagues as the next Republican leader. I've served with Senator Thune in this chamber for many years, and I'm glad to say we found common ground on a number of different issues, including veterans assistance, strengthening our national security, and more recently, the Kids Online Safety Bill, among other bills. We've gotten along well and worked together in the past. I look forward to finding ways to work together in the future. We'll have our differences for sure, and we'll make those differences known on a regular basis here on the Senate floor. But my friend from South Dakota can rest assured our side of the aisle will always seek to work in good faith and seek common ground whenever possible. But if the Senate's to be successful in the years to come, if we are to continue to be productive and effective in representing the American people, as well as we have over the past 4 years, there are a few things the new Republican majority should not forget. Hopefully they won't. Most importantly, Senate Republicans should continue to prioritize bipartisanship when they enter into the majority next year. On my first day as Majority Leader, I pledged to make bipartisanship a key part of how the Senate does its business. I said then, I've said it many times since, the Senate works best when both sides work together. 4 years later, Democrats have not only kept our promise, but we've proven that bipartisanship can work in very significant ways. The majority was the most...
All right, you've been listening to Senator Chuck Schumer, essentially just really the top of his remarks there, congratulating Senator John Thune as being chosen as the next Republican leader in the United States Senate. Of course, Schumer is still the majority leader until next year when President-elect is sworn into office. We'll bring you some remarks later in the afternoon or early morning when Mitch McConnell, if and when Mitch McConnell takes to that podium. Meanwhile, let's get to some weather and the dangerous wildfires that have broken out across parts of the Northeast, while a historic drought persists as crews in New Jersey continue to battle the deadly Jennings Creek fire near the border with New York State. A new brush fire has erupted right here in New York City. CBS News' New York's Christina Fan is monitoring that for us this morning. Christina.
Good morning. Fire crews have been sporadically checking every corner of the park this morning to ensure that none of the hotspots reignite. And that is a good thing because at around 2 a.m., the northern edge of the park caught on fire again. Thankfully, the situation is now under control. Multiple fires first broke out inside Inwood Hill Park Wednesday afternoon, drawing 140 first responders and even an FDNY Marine boat. Fire officials say crews faced many challenges, including rough terrain, elevation, and collapsing trees. Firefighters had to use water from the Harlem River and ended up dragging hose lines over 150 feet up steep terrain. The FDNY has responded to over 229 brush fires since October 29th. That is the highest amount in a 2-week period in New York City history. The cause of this brush fire remains under investigation. Reporting from Inwood, Christina Fan, CBS News, New York.
Okay, Christina, thank you very much. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa with the first look at the national forecast. Tammy.
Well, hello to you, Vlad. You know what we're looking at is dry conditions across the Northeast. She was just talking about those fires. Those fires are likely not going to be helped by this. Look, you would think all this green, this rain, I'm in the midsection of the country, and this front is moving eastward. And it should bring rain tonight, but it's going to fall apart in the places that really need it. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get much help from all of that. Let's go ahead and take a look at that drought. Here's the drought monitor right now. We'll get a new one out tomorrow. Every single state in the 48 states, the lower 48, is looking at some sort of drought. And if you look here, places like South Jersey, an extreme drought warning. That hasn't happened in years. So you can see that everywhere that you see the golds and the reds, we do have that drought problem. Now, good news, the precipitation outlook, and this is going to be in November. This is going to be from the 19th to the 23rd. It looks like it'll slightly be above average. The dry weather is going to stay out west. When I come back in just a few minutes, we'll talk about where you live and what you can expect for today. Vlad?
All right, Tammy, thank you very much. One day after we learned inflation kicked up last month, the Producer Price Index is showing a similar increase. PPI increased 0.2% in October. That is the same as the CPI. So let's bring in CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, so let's talk about the consistency with the CPI and now the PPI. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so CPI, it came in a little bit hotter than expected. Same thing with PPI. Now, PPI, these are producer prices. And what that means is the increase or decrease that producers are seeing. And of course, we talked about this yesterday, Vlad. That's important because they always pass that down to us, the consumers. So that really impacts consumer inflation. The thing that really stuck out to me, Vlad, is that last month on an annual basis, we saw 1.8% on the PPI. That is below the 2% target that the Fed wants to see. This month, it actually ticked up to 2.4% on an annual basis. So kind of when you think about it in the context of that 2%, it's not what the Fed wants to see. And that's similar to what we saw in the CPI. So what does this mean for you at home? This means that this could be a bellwether that we are seeing inflation start to tick up a little bit. I don't want anyone to panic yet, though, because it's more about Do we see this consistently happening month over month? Right now, we're hitting a speed bump. Let's see if this turns into a pothole road.
Right. Well, so what's behind all of that then? I think people are going to say, look, we've been hearing from the press, the media, that the economic data that's coming out from all indicators is strong. The U.S. economy is strong. So why this little bit of a weakness?
Well, so the fact that the economy is strong, that's kind of it, right? Because you have people going out and continuing to spend. Something that surprised me this morning.
Heating up here.
Exactly. So I always like to look at Disney earnings. And
that came out gangbusters.
And what does that tell you? That's consumer discretionary spending that people don't need to do, but they do if they want to, going to those parks. And that was actually really strong. And so it shows that maybe people are putting things on credit cards, which is not great,
not good.
But people are still spending. And so that's why you're seeing that be a little bit hotter than we expected.
All right. So we're probably going to ask you this question every time you come here because it's the question that the folks who watch us have. So what does this all mean for the Fed and interest rates?
It keeps the debate alive that maybe the Fed doesn't cut next month, right? So the market, we talked about this yesterday, still pricing in the fact that we would see a quarter-point cut. But the fact that we are getting this read after yesterday's read on inflation a little bit hotter, that is economists essentially are saying, okay, this is more data that maybe we shouldn't cut, but we're going to have a couple more reports before that Fed meeting mid-December. So this is just one data point of many.
All right. Kelly, always great to have you in studio. Keep coming back.
I will.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. We now know the likely cause of that deadly E. coli outbreak at McDonald's restaurants. We're going to have details on that next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Top stories we're following for you. Social media giant Meta is going to court. A judge ruled that the Federal Trade Commission's lawsuit against Facebook's parent company will move forward. The suit filed in 2020 claims Meta's acquisition of both Instagram and WhatsApp gave it an unfair share of the social media marketplace. A trial date will be set at a hearing later this month. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is expected to revive New York City's congestion pricing program. The new proposed rate will be a $9 toll for most vehicles entering Midtown and Lower Manhattan. Is down from $15. The program had been paused, but Hochul is trying to reinstate it before President-elect Donald Trump takes office because Trump has vowed to kill all congestion pricing programs. And the deadly E. coli outbreak at several McDonald's across the country has now sickened more than 100 people in 14 states. The CDC says the slivered onions that come on the chain's quarter pounders were likely the cause. Health officials say, though, that there is no longer a safety concern. McDonald's has brought back the famed burgers to the impacted locations using a different supplier for those onions. President-elect Donald Trump sent shockwaves across Washington yesterday with his latest controversial cabinet pick, naming Matt Gaetz as his choice for Attorney General. He joins the ranks of several other Trump loyalists named as future nominees for the administration, including former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who the president-elect plans to nominate for the Director of National Intelligence. For more on the transition, I want to bring in CBS News political director Finn Gomez. So, Finn, I asked earlier if this was. You know I'm a Star Trek nerd, right? Are you familiar with the Kobayashi Maru exam that is given to all Starfleet academies, right? And the point of that exam is that there's actually no way you can actually win or get a correct answer. In other words, it's an unwinnable test for these academy cadets just to see how they react to it and what they do. And I wonder if this is similar. You put Matt Gaetz out there and the president-elect wants to see who's with him or who's against him.
I'm more of a Star Wars nerd, to be honest, Vlad, but I will say this. I do think this is somewhat of a loyalty test from the president-elect. Does Matt Gaetz, his pick, does Matt Gaetz, his pick to lead the DOJ, is he someone who has smooth sailing ahead for his path to on his nomination path? No. There are some Republicans who have questioned, who have asked if this is the best pick. As you said, it did send shockwaves throughout this city and throughout and throughout the administration and political analysts. This was something of a surprise. We were told that there was a list of potential attorney generals coming from Donald Trump. Trump, and he was not on this list. It was something that was added late. But is it a purity test? Is it a purity test? If we've seen it already online, if let's say Gaetz does not get through the Senate, we've seen MAGA allies already say online and elsewhere that they would campaign against those Republicans who might be on the ballot in 2 years, right? So it is a big test.
So let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard, Finney. She was a Democratic presidential contender back in 2020, as you know. Now, of course, as we just indicated, she's set to be nominated to be in the cabinet, Director of National Intelligence. Hillary Clinton famously said that she believes that Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset. She's made some controversial comments. I wonder what the nominating process would look like for her. Presumably members of the Senate having access to documents that would either indicate or support the former Secretary of State's allegations, or perhaps not.
I think you're absolutely right here, Vlad. We have heard from some folks close to the intelligence community who have said essentially that because of her previous statements on Syria, on Russia, on Ukraine, and Hillary Clinton and others, Adam Kinzinger, the former Republican congressman, questioning her essentially her purpose. Why is she asking these questions? And Kinzinger called her unpatriotic, some of the statements she was saying. But this there is some concern there of these hurdles that she may have in facing in the process to getting confirmed by the Senate. I also would note that we do know that this all started. She was a Democrat, like you said, and then she endorsed Donald Trump back in August. Like, how did that get to that point? A big part of that, Vlad, a big part of it, as Donald Trump has done with many of his picks, is that it's from her time being on Fox News, being on there and essentially liking what she said and being aligned with what he thought of in terms of his bigger world picture perspective, especially with foreign policy, especially deploying troops. So he liked what she said. He liked that she was a Democrat, and he liked that she was on Fox.
All right, Finn Gomez for us this morning. Finn, thank you as always, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Vlad.
All right, let's take you back now to Capitol Hill, where Senator Mitch McConnell is speaking. Let's listen.
Through the 119th Congress, Senator Thune, Senator Barrasso, Senator Cotton, Senator Capito, Senator Langford, and Senator Tim Scott have earned the trust and support of their colleagues. I'd like to congratulate each of them and reiterate that the entire Republican Congress stands united and ready to tackle the important work of the country. As I've said before, I'm very much looking forward to taking on this next chapter from a different seat here on the floor. But before the year is out, I'd like to continue thanking the many individuals and teams who have served this institution so well during my time as Republican leader. I've had the privilege of working with consummate experts and relying on the professionalism of so many unsung heroes. Take the office of the Sergeant at Arms. Under the leadership of a distinguished career Army officer, Karen Gibson, and with the deep bicameral experience of senior staff like Jennifer Hemingway, the SAA shoulders enormous responsibilities, from the day-to-day security procedures to telecommunications infrastructure. I'm particularly grateful to the staffs of the Protocol Office, whose work helps us navigate the most solemn and visible occasions, the Chief Information Office, Telecom, and Help Desk, who keep essential communications and technology across the Senate running smoothly. Capitol Facilities, including Gary "Tiny" Richardson, who clean and maintain this magnificent building and the campus around it with unfailing care. The Employee Assistance Program, who help dedicated public servants around the Senate access important resources. The doorkeepers and press gallery, who carefully control access to this chamber.
All right. You've been listening to Senator Mitch McConnell. When he starts to say something that will have a profound effect on the American people, of course, we'll bring it to you live right here on CBS News 24/7. Until then, let's talk about this now. In his final lap before exiting the world stage, President Biden heads to South America today. His first stop, Lima, Peru, where he will meet with world leaders at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. And next week, he'll be in Rio de Janeiro for the G20 summit. Our Nancy Cordes is tracking the president's movements from the White House and joins me now to discuss. So, Nancy, what's on the agenda in terms of who the president is going to meet with, and what kind of diplomatic solutions, if any, will come out of all of this?
Vlad, good to see you. This is sort of a swan song for the president on the world stage as he holds one last round of diplomatic conversations face-to-face with some of the world's most important leaders. First and foremost, Xi Jinping of China. They're going to be sitting down one-on-one for the third time of Mr. Biden's presidency. They last met about a year ago. Those conversations are always fraught, but always very important because China is such an important competitor, both economically and militarily. But he'll also be sitting down with the leaders of Japan and Peru and Brazil and South Korea. So there is a lot to discuss for a president who has always prided himself on his legacy when it comes to diplomacy and his appreciation for these major world organizations like APEC, like the G20, and their ability to influence on kind of a grand scale the world's economy and major policies like climate, like trade. And so, he'll be spending a few days in Peru, and then he'll be spending a few days in Brazil. He's going to be leaving the White House any minute now to head to Joint Base Andrews for that flight.
All right, Nancy, let me ask you about this plan that the president-elect has to enact tariffs that, of course, will impact global trade. Considering all that, how valuable is President Biden's meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping this weekend?
I mean, there's no question that he is really a lame duck here, and every world leader knows it. They all know that President-elect Trump is going to be coming into office in under 70 days now, and he is going to have a very different approach than President Biden does now. And so the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said here yesterday, President Biden isn't going to be delivering some kind of message on behalf of President Trump. There's a one president at a time policy around here, but he is going to try to talk about some of the things that he thinks he can influence. For example, with Xi Jinping, he sees this as a great opportunity one more time to hammer home the U.S. point of view when it comes to human rights or when it comes to China's support for Russia in its invasion of Ukraine, or when it comes to Taiwanese sovereignty. These are messages that President Biden has delivered before and feels very comfortable with. But obviously, President Xi and all these world leaders who he's going to be meeting with know that President Biden does not see eye to eye with President Trump when it comes to these global tariffs that President-elect Trump wants to impose, and they realize that they're going to most likely have a very different relationship with the next president than they have with this one.
All right, Nancy Cordes, always great to have you, my friend. Thank you very much. Are you going on that trip, Nancy? Is that your assignment?
I would love to, Vlad, but there's a lot of news here. So
yeah, there is a lot
I'm
of
stuck
news.
right here at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Where you are sorely needed. Nancy Cordes, thank you very much. Love you.
You got it.
Thank you. Bye.
You too.
All right, a drought in Massachusetts may put a damper on future Christmases. About 500 of the 2,700 Christmas trees planted at Vandervalk Farm in Mendon last spring are dying. Last year, too much rain caused a tree shortage. This year, it's been too dry. Christmas trees take about 8 to 10 years to grow. I learned that because of Twin Pines Mall. Back to the future. So this year's crop is not going to be impacted. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa with another look at the national forecast. Although, Tammy, if you run over a pine tree with a DeLorean, then they don't ever grow.
They don't at all. Fun fact, I actually sold Christmas trees when I was in high school, so I know a little bit about them. That's why I have a fake tree. Yes, I can say with the Fraser fir, the noble fir, the white tip fir, just the regular fir, Scotch pines. Yeah, whole bit.
I'm so impressed.
There you go.
That's so cool. Talk more about that.
Yeah, well, I have a fake tree now. You know, you get a kid, you got a fake tree. You can leave it up longer, and you're busy. It can stay up. It can stay up for months on end. All right, you know what? Let's talk about what's going on. Let's go to the globe. I am actually going to, you're making fun of me now, Vlad, but that's okay. Love the Christmas tree farm. We do have the Caribbean that we're looking at. So speaking of rain, you can see right here, this is Tropical Depression 19, likely to become named Storm Sarah sometime within the next day or so. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're expecting in the tropics, because that is going to probably be top of mind for most people, especially everybody in Florida. I mean, you don't want to be hit by another storm. And there is the potential of it going into the Gulf and becoming a storm that is going to hit somewhere along the Gulf Coast. Right here, you can see it now developing in the Caribbean. And at this point, it is not a tropical storm. It is very close. It's got to be 39-mile-an-hour winds to do it. But it is going to actually hit Nicaragua. It is going to go back into the Bay of Campeche, likely becoming a tropical depression again after becoming a tropical storm. And then all that moisture is going to be swept up and taken probably to the northeast. Will it still be a storm, or will it get ripped apart? Too early to tell, but those are some of the things we're watching. Now, talking about rain, they're going to get an atmospheric river coming into the west coast. That's good. They're going to get some snow in the mountains. Temperatures there will be nice and cool. Across the heartland, we're looking at temperatures generally in the 60s, and then, of course, we have that rain in the northeast. Not going to do a whole lot for the drought, though. So for your weekend, we are looking at sunshine in the southeast, sunshine in the heartland, snow and rain in the northeast, and this big old front cutting across the country. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Tammy, really quick, very important question. I have a 2-year-old at home. I don't want a tree that's going to stick her. What kind of tree am I looking for this holiday?
Oh, you're looking for something really gentle. You're probably not a Douglas fir. You might look for a Fraser fir. They're a little bit prickly. They're shorter needles, but they're not real sharp. There you go.
All right, that's what I'm going to do. Tammy Sousa, thank you very much. Appreciate you. All right, international news now. Police in Paris are on high alert ahead of a soccer match between France and Israel today. How the city is preparing in the wake of anti-Semitic attacks on Israeli fans in Amsterdam last week. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Security forces are on high alert in Paris, France, ahead of a soccer match between France and Israel later today. Last night, pro-Palestinian demonstrators held protests in the city, and there are fears of repeat of last week's anti-Semitic attacks on Israeli soccer fans in Amsterdam. Our Chris Livesay has more.
Well, protesters marched by the thousands last night in Paris, both against the war in Gaza and against a soccer match scheduled to take place later tonight here against France and Israel. Now, while those protests were largely peaceful, tensions are boiling on the heels of violence last week outside a match in Amsterdam. Hooligans supporting an Israeli team chanted "Death to Arabs" and tore down Palestinian flags, while mobs cornered Israeli and Jewish fans and bystanders, beating and kicking them. The mayor of Amsterdam confirmed, quote, Jewish Israeli supporters were hunted down and attacked via anti-Semitic calls on social media and on the streets. Since then, demonstrations have been banned in the Dutch capital. Police broke up this one last night amid violence that's persisted this past week. A train in Amsterdam was attacked, with one man shouting, "Cancer Jew." Here in Paris, police are already building up around a stadium predicted to be largely empty. Now, only 20,000 of 80,000 available tickets have already been sold, with only about 150 Israeli fans scheduled to be in attendance, protected by French police. Meanwhile, French authorities emphasize there is no such thing as a 100% guarantee against violence. Back to you.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. Dentists have been talking about the importance of fluoride for years, but does it belong in your drinking water? We're going to take a closer look. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. The water you drink might be different after the next president takes office. That's because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. may have a spot in the new administration, and he wants public water systems to remove fluoride. CBS News Minnesota reporter Jeff Wagner explains why it's there, the benefits, and why some want it taken out.
Brushing your teeth when we start and end the day keeps them healthy. And in between those times, drinking a glass of tap water, especially in Minnesota, can do the same.
Is it constantly being added?
As long as we're making water, yes.
Justine Rowe is the water quality supervisor at St. Paul Regional Water Services.
And we are mandated by Minnesota state statute to add fluoride to the drinking water.
Fluoride, shown here in crystal form, is a mineral naturally found in fresh and salt water, but in much of the U.S., a tiny amount more is added at water treatment plants to help prevent tooth decay. Every day, bacteria in our mouths create acid, which remove minerals from a tooth's enamel. Fluoride replaces those minerals, making teeth more resistant to the acid. The CDC considers it one of the 10 greatest public health interventions of the 20th century, leading to a dramatic decline in cavities after 1945, when community fluoridation started.
How much fluoride is added to the water?
Well, the Department of Health says that we have to add at least 0.5 and not more than 0.9 parts per million. So we target 0.7.
That target, 7 parts per million, is the equivalent of 3 drops of water in a 55-gallon barrel. Most Americans, or about 63%, receive fluoridated water through a community water system. In Minnesota, that number is 98%, since state law mandates fluoridating water. In Wisconsin, where it's up to each municipality, it's 84%. But in states like Utah and Montana, less than half of the population drink water treated with fluoride.
What brings you to this spring?
I like the idea of wild spring and fresh, live water.
At the Frederick Miller Spring in Eden Prairie, cars line up to load up on fresh spring water.
I water my plants with it, I drink it.
It's not treated with anything, including fluoride, which some prefer.
Should have never been put in there in the first place, in my opinion.
Her concern is shared by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who wants fluoride removed for health reasons. Earlier this year, a federal study determined with moderate confidence that there is a link between higher levels of fluoride exposure and lower IQ in kids. It was based on other countries where fluoride levels were twice the recommended limit for drinking water.
I don't think necessarily it needs to be banned all across the board, but I think there should be studies done.
With photojournalist Jose Pascual, Jeff Wagner, WCCO News.
King Charles turns 76 years old today. The British monarch will spend his birthday as a working day, opening 2 hubs, distributing supplies to food banks in the UK, although there was some glitz and glam ahead of the King's birthday. Yesterday, he attended the premiere of Gladiator 2 in London, meeting the film's director, Ridley Scott, and stars of the epic. Let's bring back CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa with the last look at the national forecast. Hi, Tammy.
Well, hello, Vlad. Yeah, it's not too early to look ahead to the weekend. We need water. They're going to get water on the West Coast. All of you are going to see a bit of an atmospheric river coming in. We'll get some nice heavy snow in the Sierras for skiing, and everything will get watered there. Then we'll have sunshine in the Intermountain West, and then we await for this next front to approach and head to the east. The good news is as this moves eastward, it's going to pull in moisture from the Gulf, and maybe by early next week, it'll be pulling in moisture from what is likely going to become our next named storm, Sarah, which is still in the Caribbean. If you live in the southeast, hey, enjoy all the beautiful sunshine. A few clouds are going to be in the northeast. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Tammy, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are after the break. Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the breaking news from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.